So we're going to do something that's a little different in church today. We're going to do something at the beginning that I hope really never happens again, okay? I'm going to just straight up lie to you. We're going to play a little game that you probably have played at a party. It's real simple. It's a way to get to know people. I'm going to tell you 3 things about my life, and one of them is a lie. It's called 2 truths and a lie, right? So I'm going to tell you 3 things about my life, and then you're going to have to figure out which of the 3 of them is not true. So I'm going to put them up here. We'll just walk through them, okay? The first one is I got asked to return, or not to return, to my first year of college. The second one is I used to own a cat. And the third one is that one of our 3 girls wasn't planned, okay? So you decide, right? We're going to start the Jeopardy music. Da-na. No, I'm just kidding. So here's the question. If you're joining us online, just comment which of those 3 you think is the lie. We're looking for the lie. Remember, 2 of those are true. One of those is a lie. Here in the room, we're going to just kind of vote together for it. So if you think this is the lie, you raise your hand, okay? The first one is I got asked not to return to my first year of college. Who thinks that's the lie? Okay, a few of you, I got you. I see what you're saying. Okay, number 2 is I used to own a cat. How many think of that as a lie? Right? If you've heard me preach, I don't really love cats. Okay, I get that one. How about the third one? One of our 3 girls wasn't planned. Which one do you think? Okay, a few of you. Okay, gotcha. So we've all voted for one online in the room. And I'm just going to tell you straight up that the lie is this last one. One of our 3 girls wasn't planned. Truth is, they were all planned. Now, to be fair, I didn't plan for all 3 of them to be girls. I wasn't even remotely prepared for 3 girls, but they were all 3 planned, and we are so grateful for them. Absolutely a huge piece. The truth is that these 2 true things, I got asked not to return to my first year of college. I was in my first year of college, the Dean of Men called me into his office. I sat down, and he said, Jeremy, have you ever thought about taking a semester off? And I said, no, never really thought of it. And he said, well, let me just put it this way. If you tell me that you're not gonna come back for a semester, I don't have to show you what's in this envelope. And I'm like, I was thinking about taking a semester off, you know. And and the second one, yes, one day in a momentary lapse of judgment, I wanted to get Sheila a present, a Valentine's Day present, and so I bought her a cat. It cost dearly for us. I hate cats. Cats are evil, and we will never own a cat again, but I did used to own a cat. You know, the truth is that truth is really difficult today. I mean, it's kind of strange that we live in a world in 2024 where we might even need a definition of truth. We live in a world, our culture today tends to think that truth is a sliding scale, right? It's a little more true or a little less true, but the truth is that truth is not subjective. We need a working definition. If we're going to have a several week conversation about what is truth and what's valuable to it and what does it mean to my life, then we have to start with what is actually truth. So for us, our kind of working definition is this. The truth is something that is true or absolute, constant, and true for everyone, everywhere, all the time. Truth is something that is absolute, it's constant, and it's true for everyone, everywhere, all the time. If it is actually true, then it's not something that is going to change from me to you. It's not something that is going to change from now to then. If something is actually true, it can be reliable and it can be something that we can count on. It's going to be countable on, right, the entire time for everyone, everywhere, all the time. But we live in a world where we use a phrase today that is dangerous, I think, for us. We use a word called your truth. We say, I want you to consider your truth. I want you to proclaim your truth. I want you to live your truth. And we have a tendency to say that word like you get a different truth than I get. And we get to proclaim something in our world today. It just seems like we get to say, this is my truth, and it doesn't have to be your truth. But the problem is there is an objective truth. Let me just point it to you this way. Last week, Sheila and I, we just did some traveling. Last Sunday, right after church, I flew to Phoenix Arizona for a conference for a few days, a few meetings with people, some great cigars, and a great time. Then after that, on Thursday, I flew with Sheila, met me in Phoenix, and we flew to Albuquerque together, and we spent a couple of days in Albuquerque, and we got to go to Balloon Fiesta. If you haven't been to Balloon Fiesta, it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. Pretty amazing stuff. You're out in the middle of this huge, huge field, and they send off hundreds of hot air balloons, just one after another, all together. So cool. And then I spoke at a church last Sunday in Albuquerque, and then we flew back. Now, during that time, we were on a lot of different planes, between here and Phoenix and Albuquerque and Dallas and Memphis. It was crazy, all that constant flying. And if I was just going to say this, I was thinking, like, if talking about truth, knowing that this was coming up, if I walked up and I sat down, we fly Southwest because we're cheap. And we don't really care to have, I just need a flying bus. That's really it. So I, if, how like it is on Southwest, you sit down and then like everybody just chooses their seat. If the person who chose the seat next to me and sat down next to me and said, you know what, I'm a pilot. And I said, well, that's interesting. Have you had like training as a pilot? No, I've never had training as a pilot, but I'm a pilot. I'm like, okay. That's cool. You're a pilot. Do you have any experience, as a pilot? Like you ever flown? And no, never flown, but I feel like I'm a pilot. I'm a pilot. That's my truth. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. Have you ever any experience flying big jets or being around this stuff at all? So you have no training, you have no experience, you have no like particular kind of skill set that makes you able to be a pilot, but you feel like you're a pilot. And he says, hey, I feel like I'm a pilot. That's all well and good if he wants to live one way and I want to live another way and we can just go on, right? But the problem is when he stands up and says to the crew, right? This didn't really happen, by the way. But what if he stood up and he said to the crew, hey, I believe I'm a pilot. It's my truth. And now his truth is all of a sudden going to very much impact my life, right? He may say that, and if the crew didn't stop and go, no, I'm sorry, you don't get to fly the plane. That's not how this works. That's not how it is. But if they say, well, he's got to live his truth, and they let him into the cockpit, and they let him fly the plane, I would have to say, listen, I no longer identify as a passenger, right? Because I'm going to get out. My truth is that the pilot needs to have some training and some experience before I put my life and my family's life in his hands. The problem is, in 2024, one of the issues that we face is that we have a tendency today to confuse perspective with truth. Perspective and truth are not the same thing. And can I just offer this to you? If you're here today and you're going, oh, I feel a little awkward, I feel a little tense, because I tend to think that maybe you've said, I live your truth, or maybe you've talked about some of that way, or maybe that's how you tend to think today. And I just want to challenge you. I'm not really trying to point fingers or push back. I just want to challenge you that you might be falling for something that the enemy wants to do that is an attempt on his part to steal, kill, and destroy. I want you to ask yourself, just to consider one question. You don't have to land in the same place I land with it, but you should consider this question. What if your truth is a trap? What if the idea of live your truth or proclaim your truth, or what if your perspective kind of based truth is really a trap by the enemy? Because see, what happens is that when we confuse perspective with absolute truth, what happens is that we begin to believe that this truth thing is subjective and can be changed over time or from one person to another. And that's not true. That's not accurate. That's not real. Now, I want you to understand something. You have a perspective. It's very real. You have a viewpoint. You personally have experiences in your life and your story that have flavored or influenced the way that you see the world around you. I have those too. Everyone around us, you are entirely entitled to your perspective. You're entirely entitled to your opinion. You're entirely entitled to your experiences. But what we have sometimes that happens, the trap that we fall into, is that we begin to undermine things that are absolutely true absolutely trustworthy, consistent. They are absolute and true for everyone, everywhere, all the time. We begin to undermine those things based on our perspective. You see, there is a pursuit in your world, in your life, that matters. And the pursuit of truth is something that can be trusted and pushed on. That's why if we believe truth, then we have to be willing to accept questions, because truth is strong enough to be questioned. There was a story in Scripture when Jesus was arrested and he was going to be tried and eventually crucified, and they brought him before the Roman ruler Pilate. And Pilate got to this part where he's kind of like at first a little sarcastic with them, a little bit tense on it, but he's like, hey, listen, I don't see a lot wrong with this Jesus guy. And so he's kind of pushing his buttons and seeing what would happen. And eventually he said to Jesus, so you are the King of the Jews. And Jesus' response was like this. Look at what he says. Jesus answered, you say that I am king. In fact, the reason I was born, the reason I came into the world is to testify to the truth. You see, Jesus believed that there was the truth. I came to testify to the truth, the thing that is absolute and true for everyone, everywhere, all the time. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me, Jesus said, right? And then Pilate's response, so powerful. What is truth? You see, the idea of living your truth or my truth or what's good for me or what's good for you, that's not new to 2020s, right? That proclaim your truth, live your truth, that's not new. People have been trying for generation upon generation to make truth subjective when it's not. Jesus said, I came to testify to the truth. And Pilate's response, what is truth? It's a question that every one of us have to wrestle with or have a conversation with. We have to ask ourselves. You have to ask yourself, I have to ask myself, what do I believe is truth? And is there an absolute truth that fits into the definition that we said was our working definition? Is there a truth that is something that is absolute, constant, and true for everyone, everywhere, all the time? And I want to share with you, it's kind of we're laying the groundwork, and that's all we're really doing today. We're just putting the foundation in, laying the groundwork, putting some kind of core things in on the bottom level. The groundwork of two particular realities that come when it comes to truth. The first one is this. Reality number one is just because you think something is true doesn't mean it's true. There's been times that throughout all of history where people have thought one thing, been totally committed to it, figured it out, and then eventually found out it wasn't true. There was a time when everybody thought the world was flat, right? The earth is flat, and if you got too close to the edge, you'd just fall off the edge. We got some photos from space, did some research, figured out that the earth is more spherical than it is flat, and that maybe our perspective was wrong. Then now all of a sudden people are randomly switching back, right? To a point where they think that the earth is flat again. That's not true, but that's a whole conversation for another time. There was a time when people thought that their sickness was related to their blood. And so they would cut patients open. The medical prevailing knowledge medically was to cut people open and let the bad blood out and hope that you'd get new blood. Well, he found out eventually that that's not how it works. You kind of need that new blood to live. And so they would stop doing that, right? There was a time in history when people believed, they thought that depression was caused by a portion of the brain. So they would cut people open, take a part of their brain out and go, well, they're not depressed anymore. Yes, they're also a vegetable, but they're not depressed anymore, right? When they found out later on that maybe it was just a chemical imbalance that could be treated with some medication. You see, just because you think something is true doesn't mean that it's true. It's so important that we understand that sometimes our perspective is limited and we learn to change. Now, can I just be honest with you? What I don't want you to do is hear me saying that just because I believe that the Bible is true means that it's true. I believe that it's true, and I believe that it can stand up to your questions. I believe that it is absolute and constant and true for everyone, everywhere, all the time. And I believe that if you ask questions and push back and you really pursue truth, then you will find out what I'm saying is true, because I believe that it's absolutely true. But just because I believe it's true doesn't mean that's not what makes it true. Let me just share this passage with you. It's so helpful that the truth is our hearts really can't be trusted. The heart is, this is what Jeremiah said, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. Who can understand it? Now, this is a tense verse for me. I got to be honest with you, because this is true of us, but it wasn't intended to be true. See, when God set our lives in motion, he gave us a good heart. And at the core, our hearts can be trusted. But apart from the redemptive work of Jesus, your perspective, your heart, your ways of thinking are innately selfish. And apart from the work of Jesus in your life to redeem and bring back the heart that God originally gave you, our hearts are deceitful and sick, and you can't trust them. You see, just because we believe something is true doesn't mean that it's absolutely true. It may mean that our selfishness has taken over. Let me just ask you if you think this is true. There's this passage in Scripture where Paul is talking to Timothy, and he writes this letter, and he says to Timothy, this young preacher, he says, preach the word of God. Be prepared whether the time is favorable or not. Patiently correct and rebuke and encourage your people with good teaching. For there is a time coming when people will no longer listen to sound and wholesome teaching. They'll follow their own desires and will look for teachers who will tell them whatever their itching ears want to hear. They will reject the truth and chase after myths. This was written 2,000 years ago. Does it seem like it's happening? I mean, to an extreme today, but over time, it's always been happening, where people have confused their perspective, what their desires are, their selfishness. This passage calls it their itching ears, right? We've confused our perspective with truth, and we wind up choosing to think that something we feel or think or believe is absolute when it's not. And we get to a place today where we follow our own desires and look for teachers or pastors or people who will tell us whatever we want to hear instead of what we need to hear. And I want to just point this out, though, for those of us in the room who are fans of absolute truth. Can I just point out what Paul's direction to Timothy was? He says, patiently correct, rebuke, and encourage. Not judgmentally, not harshly or meanly, not with a selfish motivation, but our intention, what Paul tells us, is that we should kindly, patiently rebuke people, work with them, help us understand that maybe the your truth game is really a trap. And maybe what you and I need to do is lean in to what God might be saying. Because here's the deal. When we're impatient, folks, when we're impatient about rebuking, correcting, and encouraging people, you know what is? It's usually an indication that you don't really believe what you believe is true. When we're impatient and we have to force our opinion on people, it's because we're scared. Can we just be honest? If the Bible is absolutely, really, actually true, then it can stand your questions. And I want you to know something. We created Journey Church so that you have a safe place to push back. Just because you don't believe the way we believe doesn't mean that you're not welcome here. We're thrilled that you're here. In fact, you can belong at Journey long before you believe like we believe. In fact, we believe that this stuff is so true and so real that it's not just that. It's not just information to us. In fact, that's the second reality I'd like to challenge you with. As Christians, this is important for us to get. That truth isn't just information that Christians believe. It's not just the list of things that we believe. Truth is someone that we follow. Truth isn't just about information. Jesus is truth. So maybe you're here today and you've kept this whole faith in God and church, Jesus thing at arm's length. And you're like, I'm not sure I buy it. Maybe it's a logical thing. I'm not sure I believe it because it's kind of a scary thing to you. Or maybe it's because you're like, man, I've been around that and I'm holding it all at arm's length because I don't believe what they believe. They impose those things on me. Can I just say this to you? The truth for us, especially here at Journey, truth is not just about information. Truth is a person. In fact, when Jesus says this in John 14:6, it's a pretty powerful verse. Jesus said, I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life. No one comes to the Father except by me. No one comes to the Father except by me. You know, over the years, as I've heard people talk about Jesus, most people love Jesus' teaching. Most people don't usually go, man, I really don't like what he had to say. Because people love the kindness of Jesus in his teaching. They love the openness of being able to accept people exactly where they are. They love that he spoke truth to power. They often will love in the teachings of Jesus or the actions of Jesus that he spent time with people who were broken and messed up. But then when we get to verses like this, people tend to push back. Like, who is Jesus to tell me that he's the way, the truth, and the life? And that nobody comes to the Father except me. They love the teachings of Jesus. They love the life of Jesus. But often people push back and hold out the exclusivity of Jesus. Because most of the time when people see this, they see an exclusive statement. I am the way, the truth, and the life. That means that there is no other way. There is no other truth. There is no other way to life. And people tend to not like that. Maybe you're here today and you're going, that's exactly the reason why I've held it at arm's length. It's not necessarily a logical thing. It's not a fear thing. It's not an experience thing. For me, it's this question. Is there only one way? And here's what I'd have to say to you. Can I just say this? I don't see this as an exclusive statement. In fact, I think this is the most inclusive statement ever made in the history of mankind. An exclusive statement says that you have to do certain things to jump through. Now, if you've got this kind of path and anybody can get here, but you got to do these things. Every other world religion says do something, right? Do this, keep these tenets, do this thing, make this pilgrimage, make this trek in your life, do these things for people. And when you do that, you get this. It's kind of a give and take thing. To me, that's an exclusive thing. That means that maybe if I have more resources, I could make a trip, right? Or if I'm able to be kind to people, but I'm stuck in a bad place, or if something bad happens to me and my kindness is impacted because of it, that somehow or another, the circumstances and the time of life like put me in a place to be able to do certain things. Or maybe sometimes world religions have kind of put us like, hey, if you've got these kinds of resources or those kinds of resources. What I think it makes this the most inclusive, kind, and gentle statement in the whole world is that Jesus is saying everyone, everywhere, all the time. Everyone, everywhere, all the time comes to the Father the exact same way, by admitting that they are powerless to control their own tendency to do the wrong thing. That everyone, everywhere, all the time, right, knows that they can come to the Father the exact same way, no matter what color their skin is, no matter what time period or place they're from, no matter how much money they have or don't have. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And everyone, everywhere, all the time, comes to the Father the same way. That it's not based on this color of your skin, the location of your life. It's not based on the money or the resources you have, the influence, the friendships. It's all based in one very real truth that Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And it doesn't matter what I believe about it. He is the way, the truth, and the life. It's absolute and true. And so can I just say this to you? If you're here today and you've held Jesus, faith, God, church, Jesus, the whole thing at arm's length, can I just say this? This statement is not an exclusive statement. It's an inclusive statement meant for you. That everyone, everywhere, all the time comes to Jesus, comes to the Father the exact same way through the person of Jesus. Truth isn't information that we believe about God. Truth is a person that we follow. And can I just offer you this? If you're here today and you're thinking, man, maybe I want to give my life to Jesus, I'd love an opportunity to talk with you. If you'd go to ourjourney.news and just let us know on that next step button on the bottom right-hand corner, you just say, hey, listen, I'd love to talk with somebody about giving my life to Jesus. Or maybe if you're here in person right after this service, I'm going to hang out over here by this baptistry. I'd love an opportunity to help you take your next step toward Jesus. But if you're here today and you're already a follower of Jesus, you're in this place in your life and your story where you're like, yeah, no, I've given my life to Jesus, then can I just say this to you? This is absolute for you. If you're here today and you're not at that place, today your decision really isn't, do I do what's next? Today your decision is really about, am I going to follow Jesus with my life? But if you're a follower of Jesus, this is where we live today. If Jesus' truth is different than what your truth says, then the call of the gospel is to die to yourself and live according to his truth. If you call yourself a follower of Jesus and the teachings of Jesus, the life of Jesus is contrary to your life, then the call of the gospel on your life is very simple. It's to die to your old ways, to die to yourself and choose to live, to take up, to follow, to live according to the truth of Jesus. Because truth is not a sliding scale. It's not a concept or an idea. Truth is something that's constant and valuable and true for everyone, everywhere, all the time. So true. Just choose today to crucify, to die to your old self, to your flesh, and live according to his truth.